Hey, welcome to Guy Shrink. I'm Bill Roman, host here at Guy Shrink, and we're in Toledo, Ohio, the Glass City. I'm with my producer and engineer, Jordan Valdivieso, who continues to be on assignment in Atlanta, Georgia. I love it. And our assistant engineer, Keegan Berner, who's close by. So today our guest is really a wonderful, this is going to be a really great conversation. This was my first cousin and one of my best friends, Stephen Ridella. And Stephen and I've known this guy his entire life, which is really kind of scary, isn't it? And today we're going to talk about something, what keeps us awake at night. And it might be what's sometimes called the Peter Pan syndrome about, I don't know if I want to grow up. So Stephen, what keeps you awake at night?
Well, great to be here, Bill, to have a chat with you. I'm thrilled to do this. When you started this, I saw this, I go, this is exactly the kind of stuff that guys, especially guys our age, need to have those tough discussions about who you are, and a lot of guys don't want to know who they are, don't want to grow up. But I think during the pandemic, we've had this great opportunity to be more introspective. You don't have to do the 2-hour commute, especially here where I'm at in the DC area. You don't have to do the commute. You can get up, go to work, but you've got all this time now. You got this extra time, and people are filling it with whatever they give to get through the day. But it's a great opportunity. It's been the last 2 years to really just think about, who am I? And how did I get here? Why am I doing this today? And then, as a lot of men in their middle age and beyond go, well, what am I going to do next? What's the rest of my life look like? Those are tough questions. And I think a lot of men just don't want to think about it and just want to stay where they are and just put their head in the sand. And as you said, be a kid forever. Too many examples of that. We can talk about that going forward. But I think that's what keeps me up, keeps me thinking about things. I wake up and I go, I know I got to go to work today, but on my Zoom calls and my Teams calls, whatever you want to call it. But I got a lot of extra time to think about this stuff, and let's just chat about that. I think we got so much material that we can get through.
Sure. Well, in a way, it's kind of like, what do you think about when you don't have to think about anything? And that's the stuff that keeps a guy awake at night. And I noticed in our conversation, you talked about the pandemic as an opportunity versus something to be either survived or get ourselves through, and seeing it as a more negative thing. What took you to the place of seeing it as an opportunity?
Oh, I think it was just the initial fear of everything, and being trained in science and engineering for years. I mean, yeah, you knew you had to deal with a pandemic, and you're going to, and you had family, we had responsibilities, but it just gave me this time to think, and my day was done. It's like 5 o'clock. You're like, well, I don't have to drive home now. I've got 2 extra hours before I got to put dinner on, maybe. And, rather than just fill it with useless stuff, is just start thinking about it, start jotting stuff down, start, maybe journaling, maybe reading, maybe, doing something you always thought you wanted to do and just didn't have the time to do it. I think now there's great opportunities to do that. And, that was some of the motivation for me to explore things I hadn't done before. I did more running. I did more. I'd like to do more reading, but there was a lot of shows to catch up on. That I did less of. But I think there's, the introspection part was really important for me to think about the things that I wanted to think about emerging from pandemic. Where do I want to go next?
You said in a conversation we had earlier about, you read a book, something like 500 Things to Do Before You Die, or something like that. Was that, or is that something you're just making up?
No, this is real stuff. This is a great story. This is before the millennium. I traveled a lot in the 90s, and this is as relevant today as it was back then. There was a USA Today ad by, I think it was a champagne company, if anything. It's like 500 things to do before January 1st, 2000.
Okay.
And number, like the second one I read was, figure out who you want to be with. And I'm like, what? That is amazing. I was like, I just never thought about it. I mean, I'd been married a long time already. I was, things weren't going well. And I'm like, you couldn't have hit me over the head with a sledgehammer meant more. And just that it was like a slap in the face going, I never thought about that. And, I wouldn't say it was the impetus that sent me forward and got me in the next track of life, but it was certainly one of those things where you have these aha moments. And I think that was one of them. And it led me down a new pathway that, dictated the last 20 years of my life. But there's no reason why you can't really say that to yourself right now. Any guy, it's like, who do I want to be with? Who do I want to be? And how do I, live the fulfilling life that I think, that everybody should deserves to have.
Well, that's really interesting what you're saying. I would say probably 40 years ago, 50 years ago, there was a book written, something like Seasons in a Man's Life by a guy named Levinson. And he said, as he looked at the decades, particularly the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, in the research that was done way back then, he said three major questions arise in the 20s, in that the defining decade, what's been called the defining decade. That who am I? Who do I want to be with? And what do I want to do with my life? And now here we are, in our 60s, or in my case, a little older, wrestling with the same questions. How amazing is that?
Basic, but it means to me is that there's a lot of people that aren't following that, that advice or that they're not asking those questions. They're settling. So many guys settle. And I think we go down this path a lot. It's just, there's a fear of change. There's a fear of, I got myself into this, everything's great, more or less, and I'm not going to change, and nothing's going to change. And because if I change, then my whole life gets screwed up and I can't handle it. So I think just the settling part is wrong. I mean, you can make that decision. It is a decision, no decision is still a decision. But I think that if you just do a little bit of introspection, a little bit of thinking about it, you might find yourself willing to make that change.
Because when you say settlement or settling, what does that kind of entail in your mind? As you said, that you said that's not a very good thing to do, but what does that mean? Just kind of like you go on autopilot, or what?
I think a lot of it is, it could be autopilot. It could be like, you don't want to rock the boat. I mean, you might have a job that you don't like. You might have a family situation that is not ideal, but it's good enough. I mean, there's just a settling of, it's okay. It's good enough. I don't need to change. I don't want to change. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, you gotta every so often reevaluate, right? You've got to look at things. I mean, I've reevaluated my career over and over again. I'm one of these people that always is looking for, not so much looking for new positions, but looking to always improve myself, right? Always learn. I always want to learn something. But some people are like, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to watch the same TV shows every night. I'm going to go to the same bars every week. I'm going to go, my routine is what routine. I like it. I don't want to change. I see that a lot of places that people don't want to change. I mean, it's not just guys, it's everybody, but I think a lot of men settle for their situation. They got into it and they don't want to get out because it's too hard to think about what the next steps might be.
Maybe it's kind of comfortable. I know that a lot of people, I don't know what being healthy is about, but I am familiar with being sick. I don't like it, but I'm at least familiar with it. I think I'll just stay in this rut or whatever you want to call it.
Oh yeah, I mean, they may have their man cave set up. They may have the car they want. I mean, can you imagine busting your whole life up? And when you do that, you lose a lot of stuff that you may have had. A comfortable house, a nice car. Maybe you can't go out all the time. I mean, just things like that scare the bejesus out of people. But it doesn't have to all happen at once. There's one of the things I wanted to make sure we talked about was something I learned in a class I took last year. All places Harvard Business School, but it was a really cool discussion about your authentic self. Like, who are you? do you ever look at yourself and figure out who you are? How did you get here? And that's what I mentioned, early on, was every one of us has a life story, right? You start with birth, you're going to end up somewhere else, and eventually. But along the way, there are these pathways you take because certain things happen. They call them crucibles. Certain things happen in your life that made you go a certain way. It could have been a tragic event in your life. It could have been and it could be anything that sent you on a different path and made you decide, I got to go here now. Or maybe it wasn't even you had a decision. Something happened, you had to go down that path because that was the only path you could go down. And those define who you are. And if you learn from those, you can sort of make your own crucibles at going forward, saying, I'm going to now decide, I want to be a stockbroker, and you can do it, but you've got to make the effort. But you got to look back and see what has changed, what has made you who you are today based on your life experiences. And getting in touch with those experiences, getting in touch with those feelings that made you make those choices.
Well, I part of that experience thing then would be, what's my response or reaction to the things that happened to me? I think of Viktor Frankl's wonderful work of A Man's Search for Meaning, where he says they can take everything away from you, but the last freedom that you have is your freedom to choose your response in every given situation. And then we become our the cumulative effect of our responses to life's situations. So when I say, who am I? It's not I'm a victim of circumstance. It's I'm here because of certain choices, crucibles, I think it would be a word. And those are, which is interesting. The word crucible comes from a Latin word that means cross, agony. Crucifixion. I mean, it's a crossroads. It's a point of decision. There's pain involved in it, and it has to do with what's my decision making process in all of those events. And I may just resign and not do anything, but that's a decision in and of itself. So I like that. Who am I as the cumulative effect of the decisions I've made in my life.
Right. But the moving forward is also about understanding what your resilience is. And a lot of people feel like they don't have it. They've never been challenged. They'll realize that they've had to be resilient if everybody's had changes in their lives, right? For whatever reason. Well, how did I go to this certain college? Why am I living in a certain town? I mean, you have to adjust. You have to be resilient to some effect, but also it probably, as one gets older, you want to do less of that because you feel like I can't do that again. I'm not strong enough anymore to do that. And that's not true. I think people can find their resilience, but it's getting in touch with who you are. And I think that a lot of guys just forget about it and I'm who I am. And it's bad. I mean, it affects your relationships. It affects relationships with your significant other, your spouse, whatever you want to call it, your kids, your coworkers. I'm not sure what relationships I have with coworkers. It's a little strange doing it on the screen all day long, but your kids and your significant other, it's important. They see it. And I think that breeds a lot of family disharmony, honestly, that you can't talk about it, or you can't, you show the same person over and over again. And that's what I think some people that's how relationships get stale, honestly.
Yeah. Well, who am I has also got to do with, I said, the cumulative effect of my decisions and my circumstances, but also the cumulative effect of an emotional history that floats down through generations. And who am I? A piece of that is also, what's my family been like? And since you and I share the same grandparents, and I often think, we talk about resilience. I thought, there was a lot of resilience in those people that immigrated to this country. And I just can't imagine it. And you and I have talked about what was it like going to grandma's house. Don't go during Lent because you're not going to have any fun. It was going like boot camp. But the idea was that these they had courage beyond my imagination, that's for sure, to leave everything in another country and come over here.
I don't know how they did it. I mean, just leaving that entire situation. And I haven't been there. You've been there. I've been close, and I can imagine what it's like. I've seen pictures and I've heard stories, but just picking up and going to a completely foreign land and reinventing yourself in that time frame too, which was
Yeah.
a lot of distrust of the new immigrants that came, the challenges they had, and the situations they had to face. I mean, way more difficult than us deciding, where am I going on vacation this year, or should I buy
Right.
that car? I mean, they left us with a legacy of, and you made a good point earlier about what did they chose lives of service and family, whereas we're choosing lives of, yes, family, yes, service, but also of pleasure and what else I want to say, but definitely more things than they were able to do.
Right. Right. But I just think the resilience, which is a family trait, I do believe that resilience comes in a family, and that somehow or other we got a dose of it. And I think that's a piece of who I am, at least defining myself, not just my own decisions, but kind of a legacy of previous generations as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, we are who we are from the past. I think we're that generation of sort of transition, because I think the kids today, when they get to our age, what are they going to remember? I mean, they're not going to remember much hardship that we did growing up more middle class. They grew up differently. They grew up, man, I wouldn't say more privileged, but certainly didn't experience what we did. And that's typical. Any new generation is going to have a different set of circumstances. But I just hope that they've learn or can get some of that resilience when things go bad, because things are going to go bad in your life, and probably when you least expect it, honestly. That's what I like about Crucible. How do you handle that when things go bad? And it doesn't have to always be bad. We were taught in this class that not all Crucibles are bad, right?
No, right,
You're going to inherit $10 million. All right, then what do you do then? That's a
right,
good
right.
Crucible.
Right. Yeah, but it's tough stuff with that too. There's agony and anxiety with getting $10 million as well.
Absolutely.
Right. So if one of the questions to ask is who am I? And I don't think that's one of those close your eyes and squint and it'll show up. It takes a lot of work and introspection. Writing, I think writing's a good way of getting at it, like you talked about. And I think it does change over the course of your years. Who am I? Then the second question is, well, how did I get here? Was that the second question that you asked? How did I get here? So what is that about? How did I get here?
Well, it's about the path, I think, that we were talking about earlier, on the path of life. But you know, I look back on my own experiences. I upheavaled my life, as I said, after that crucible 20 years ago. But also, in the interim, I've had others, real significant changes, or a decision is thrust upon you, and you either settle and say, "Nah, I'm not doing that," or you just say, take the plunge. But I don't think people wake up one day, they look around their house and go, "How did I get there? How did I get here? Why am I drinking this coffee today? Why am I eating this food today?" And I don't know. It's a tough decision. Not so much a decision. It's a tough to have that conversation with yourself. Again, like that's not who am I, but it's kind of leads to the next question of where I want to go. But you've got this whole history yourself of who you are. And you're like, all right, you lay it all on the table and you look at it, and sort of like you open up your drawer and throw everything on the table and go, well, what's here? What do I like? What do I don't like? Those are a lot of discussions that you have to have with yourself. I think it shows a lot of maturity. It shows also a lot of just ways of dealing with it. I did something recently, kind of brings to mind sort of more, maybe a more just demonstrative way of saying it. I got rid of a bunch of shit from my house in the last year and a half.
Okay.
I brought a lot of stuff back, when my mother passed away, but also from the house, but also just and it's this cathartic feeling when you throw out a bunch of stuff or give it away. I mean, thank God for Facebook the Facebook giveaway page. I love those things, and you can put it on there and 2 hours later, someone's picking up a bag of stuff you don't want anymore. And it just feels good about cleansing that kind of stuff, or just getting rid of stuff. So you can look at your baggage from how did I get here and say, okay, you know what, I don't need that anymore. Get rid of it.
Yeah.
Literally, and sometimes it has to be figuratively, it has to be literally. There's things you just got to get rid of in your life. That may be dragging you down. That may be, I remember a commencement speech I went to years ago, at University of Michigan, actually. And I think it was a Russian, I shouldn't say Russian right now, but sorry about that. It was a Russian, he was a dissident of some sort, I can't remember his name. And he had come here many years ago. And he gave this really, really heartfelt talk. And one of the things I just remember a takeaway was, he said, there are people in your life that you just don't need to be around. He said, just get rid of them. He goes, don't even think about it. Just get rid of it. You'll meet new people. This is a subject I want to actually touch upon is how do you make friends, at ages like this? I was hearing about this recently where people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, it's tough to make new friends. So you hang on to people in your life that, gosh, I'm never going to make a new friend again. Right. And I think this was really cool. When that guy said that, I remember this decades later, that this guy just said, you don't need those people in your life. I was, something that got sent to me not that long ago was, those people that know who they are, that are authentic. Those are the kind of people you want in your life.
Yeah, it's easy to get trapped. I think we talked before about relationships can be entrapments, and I get trapped in relationships, and I'm wondering how did I get here? One of the questions to think about is, how do I feel trapped? Either in a job, in a place, in a relationship. And then what do I do with that? Do I stay in entrapment? Do I move? Do I take it as a chance to do something differently? Or do I adopt perhaps a way of operating that might be deceitful and dishonest, because I really don't want to be with this person, but I got to fake it?
I know, but the first question you ask yourself is did I do enough assessment of everything you just mentioned?
Yeah.
And give it a fair shot, because a lot of years can go by in a relationship, in a job, and one morning you wake up and you go, I don't want to do this anymore, and you walk away. And you shouldn't do that. You got to give it a fair shot. Now, whether it's you and your significant other go to counseling, or you have this heartfelt talk that you never had in years, because all you talk about is the weather and what are you going to eat for dinner and where are you going on, the next, what else is going on in your work. I mean, that can lead to years and years of just nothing talked about. You've got to be able to assess everything that you want to do. I mean, I think post-pandemic, I still think, they talk about the Great Resignation. I still think there's a lot of change that's going to come in people. They're going to really reassess where they're going. Do they want to be with not just their job, their whole life? And there may be this huge sort of boomerang effect of people moving everywhere, changing jobs everywhere, changing relations everywhere. But you got to give it a fair shot. That did I do enough to assess what was going on in my current situation? But you just can't let years go. I'll think about that. As Scarlett O'Hara said, I'll think about that tomorrow. No, you got to think about it today.
Yeah.
You can put this stuff off for decades, honestly, Bill. I've been there. I remember putting decisions off for a long, long time. It doesn't mean you have to make a change all the time, every year. I mean, that's not what I'm getting at. It's just there is a next thing that can happen. There's a next relationship that can happen. There's a next job that can happen. The opportunities out there, God, are more than ever for all that stuff.
Yeah.
They really are. It's easier than ever to meet somebody. It's easier than ever to find a job. There's you're getting deluged with emails every week, and you see opportunities all the time. It just you got to filter it out. But making the assessment of where you're at, and then making really an informed next step.
Okay, the next step would lead to action somewhere along the line. You actually have to do something.
Yep. Where do I want to go?
Yeah, hope is not a good strategy. So we have to do something. So where do I want to go? So where do you want to go? Where do you how do you get there? How do you come to that decision saying I'm going to do X instead of Y? How do you do that?
I think the best way is again what I said before about making the assessment. Once you make the assessment, say, yep, I need to make that change. Is there's so much information available now. It's a little daunting, honestly, but everybody wants to do something they like. The pleasure part has to come out, right? I want to do something I like. I want to work in a job that I like, not the job that just pays me. I see a lot of people who are just ditching their high paying. I've read this a lot about people ditching their high paying Wall Street jobs and just, starting a B&B or, buying a bunch of houses and doing flips on houses or, something they really like. Everyone's got a passion, right? So it was like, find your passion. What are the things you like to do? And then build your life around the passion. I mean, I think that's a great thing. I love, there's certain things in my life I've loved for decades, which is, I've been collecting wine and drinking wine for since my 20s, before buying the bottle of Almondin Mountain Chablis, I think it was, that I used to take to the football games up in Ann Arbor. And now,
Well, yeah, since you went to that school up north that I can't say, you probably did need to drink, particularly that last game of the season.
Ohio State games, yeah, exactly. There's like two of those bottles. And yell, but it's a passion I've had. I love it, and I see these. I've met some people over the last couple of years through a friend of mine who's in the spirits industry. There's a bunch of stuff online. These people are all passionate. They all get online now and talk about it, and they're making careers out of it online. You're like, wow, how cool would that be? But you can't just throw up a switch one day and say, I'm going to be a wine, guru online now. You got to do the prep. You've got to do the basics. So before you make any change where I want to go, you got to do the research. You got to figure out where is it, where are my strengths? Where's my passion? What do I need to do to get there? You just can't pull up anchor and start sailing.
Well, you could. Well, you could, that's why I appreciate Robert Greene's stuff so much, his writings. He's had that marvelous book called Mastery that he has written, which is highly researched and lots of practical illustrations of real people who pulled all this stuff off. But he talks about finding something that you enjoy. And it's more than just saying that. He said, we live in a culture that says work should be drudgery. You should always come home complaining about work. And he says, how fulfilling is that? And it's not. And he says, find something. And of course, what he does, it lays out, is try lots of things out. Where you want to go, I think, is what I call try some behavioral experiments. Try several different things out for a short period of time and see what happens. In my work with couples, they all look, please fix her and it'll all work out kind of thing. Doesn't usually work that way. But I say, let's try this out for the next 3 weeks when this situation arises and do A, B, and C instead of X, Y, and Z. And let's see what happens. Interestingly enough, Gandhi had these things that he talked about, behavioral experiments where he would try certain things out and to see how they flew, which is kind of interesting. Gandhi, he read the Sermon on the Mount every day. And he actually wanted to try experimenting with this behavior that Jesus talked about. Now, he wasn't a Christian, but he had great respect for the teachings of Jesus. And he said, I'm going to try to put some practical application into these things. And so he just called them behavioral experiments. I think that's a way to test out, where do I want to go? Try something out for a little while and see what happens.
That's a great story to tell, because you got to be receptive, right? So you got to let this stuff come in. You may find all this stuff and say, oh, I can't do that, or I don't want to try that. That makes me uncomfortable. Is and that's what I call it, either the resilience and or the resistance to change. I settled because no, I'm never going to do that, because I know from experience from parents and stuff, why do you want to do that? Well, it looks like it's fun to do. But sometimes it's like, yeah, I can't do that. I never thought I would be a marathoner, right? I laughed at, I scoffed at it. The first time it was brought up to me, you gotta be, I can't run. Sure, you can run. I've run marathons now. So you're like, you're capable if you put your mind to it, but you also have to be receptive, because if I just shut the door on it and said, no, I'm never going to do that, I would have never done it.
Yes. Yeah. So how old were you when you started really seriously doing marathons?
57.
Okay, 57 as opposed to 20.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's just an incredible story to hear, because 50, I'm too old, I can't do that, whatever. And you did it because you said, I want to do this. And of course, you didn't run a marathon in the first minute after you thought it, but you trained yourself. You did some behavioral experiments to see what would happen. And look what happened. You're running marathons.
I remember running my first 5K, and it was right here, almost outside my house. There was a charity 5K that was down the street. They were going to run, and I go, how easy is this? Like, how I got to try this, right? And it was like, I signed up and I went down there. I was, butterflies are flying. I'm like, I don't know how to do this. And I ran it. I got back and I was like, just ecstatic. And I go, I can do that. It's only 3.1 miles, like, certainly then I could expand it. So after that, that was probably the turning point of, sure, I can be a runner. And the exuberance of a race environment is much better. The training sucks. I'll tell you that. No matter what, every runner will tell you the training sucks.
Okay.
But once you do it, every time you finish even a training run, you come home and you're like, that endorphins kick in, and the except for some pains you may have sometimes, it's so fulfilling. And yeah. I know that I've added years to my life, or at least, tamp down the age effects of other things by doing that. So the benefit was there. But anything is like that. You're right. Try it out. If you don't like it, we'll do something else. There's a million things to try, right? So you shouldn't shut out anything. It's important. And if you stay in a relationship but you want to try something else, you can tell your significant other, your spouse, like, I want to be a runner now. They shouldn't. If you talk about it in a trusting environment, then everybody should respect it. I had the opportunity because where I was in my life, and I took advantage of it. I think it's great. But I'd like to do some other things too, like maybe career changes or take on a new hobby. There's just so many different things out there, and more than ever, the information is available to make the right choice.
Yeah. So it's making a decision to do something, then trying something out to see what would happen. And then when you use the word passion, when you find your passion, then you said, like running, like you training is difficult stuff. Now, Robert Greene's book, Mastery, he talks about, finding what you want. And then he talks about what he calls apprenticeship. Spending years in apprenticeship. That's gathering skills. That's training if you're an athlete. And he says things like, somewhere between 5 and 25 years. And people freak out. They go, "Why?" But the idea is you work at your trade. You gather information. You test stuff out. You work on it. You reflect. You receive feedback. You give out stuff. It's a process, and then you also get a coach as well. A mentor or whatever you want to call it. But this is a process of how to become a master in something, whether it's carpentry, become a master cabinet maker, a mechanic, a writer, a cook, anything.
They say that everyone's got one novel in them, right? So I've been writing that novel for over 20 years also.
Oh,
right?
Great.
I've got these chapters all over the place, and I read them and I go, this would be a really good book, but how the hell do I finish it? Now I read that there's all these online portals and self-publishing, and A friend of mine just published a book about an experience that they had on Amazon. It's all doable. And you're like, why don't I just go do this? And it'll probably get trashed, but who cares? At least I tried it, And so the opportunities, I think, are available more than ever.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And that's cool if you can give up the necessity of, I got to finish this book so it'll get published and be a bestseller. If it's, I've just got to finish the book just for me, it would be great. Giving up the outcome.
I want to get one thing done before we're through here, and we can do these again all over the place. I'd love to. Is the one thing you can't forget, a guy has to remember is, and I think it's maybe you and I and the values that we were taught. And there's a lot about, we didn't even get into values yet, which is responsibility, accountability. A lot of guys forget about that, and they got to be accountable. They've got responsibilities to their kids, to their spouse or significant other. They've got to keep that flame going. They've got to, kind of always nurture that. And they get lost sometimes in that, I don't want to do that today, or I don't want to deal with that kid today, or I don't want to deal with that responsibility today. No, You can do all these self things that we talked about improving yourself and getting to where you want to go, but you can't leave behind all that other stuff. It is as important. I feel like there were times in my life that I let people down. I'll admit it. But I think at the same time, it's taught me, you've got to keep that. You've got to keep that responsibility. You've got to be accountable. You've got to have the maturity to say, today I'm not going to do that thing for me. It's not all about me. I'm a Leo. A lot of things are about me. But I think that saying, today I'm not going to do that. I need to focus on that.
Yeah. I think that's part of resilience. I think part of resilience is that responsibility that keeps me going. Seriously, there's a larger picture out there other than me, for which that I've got some oar in the water about.
Our fathers went to their same jobs for decades, right? And they brought them that paycheck every week, gave it to their wife.
Right.
And they did it again that same next week, and they did it again and again and again, and made lives for us that we have now taken advantage of and nurtured, and I'm grateful for that. But that's the responsibility they felt they had.
Yes.
As children of immigrants, and that was instilled in them, I think, and instilled in us. I think we need to pay that forward too.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that's true. This has been a fabulous conversation, which we're going to do this again for sure. Because there's a couple of things about being a guy. What are some of the qualities of being a man? Well, I think working with those questions of who am I? How did I get here? Where do I want to go? Are certainly things that keep one awake at night, particularly if you're not working on any kind of resolution about them.
Exactly. If you're just doing the same thing day after day, you're not growing.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Stephen, any like one-liner elevator speeches on advice to a guy about stuff that stay awake at night that you might want to just kind of give us?
It's all about, I think in the end, we all want to be happy, right? So it's like, find the things that make you happy. Find the positivity in life. There's so much negativity going on right now. It's find something positive every day. That's what I leave for my soundbite today.
Okay. Well, Stephen Ridella, thanks for sharing with Guy Shrink and those of us that are listening. If this has been good for you, tell your friends, your buddies to listen in. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, a whole bunch of other places. So thanks a lot for listening in, and we'll catch you the next time.
My pleasure, Bill. It was a lot of fun.